What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Magic for Life podcast. We're here for part 2 of the interview with Ron Montez. I hope you're enjoying it so far, so let's cut right to the intro and get back to the interview.
Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm part of a motivated group of people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and unlocking our true potential is the key. We are Magic for Life, and this is your weekly magic.
Last year, we worked with you on a really cool project. We asked to write your biography, and we got that produced and written, and we released it, and it seems to be going pretty well. Tell us about the experience that you had doing a biography. I mean, it's kind of a surreal thing, I think, not only for us to have helped you put that together, but I think to some extent it's got to be pretty interesting from your side. You know, obviously biographies sometimes aren't done until you're gone, right? But I think, you know, your life has been pretty interesting and such a valuable story for people to know about. So how was that putting that biography together for you?
Well, I think it was good for me to search my mind and do a little research as to what I had actually done in my career.
Sure.
And when it happened.
Sure.
I mean, you guys would ask me certain questions, and I would have no idea when it happened, who it was with.
Right.
So it forced me to do some searching.
Yeah.
And it refreshed my memory in a lot of respects. It brought up some great memories.
Sure.
Because I had to reflect back.
Yeah.
On the certain periods of my life that I had forgotten about. Some people are really excellent at remembering things.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Some of my friends remember their high school days like totally.
Yeah.
The friends of who they were and who they dated and I have no idea. One of my friends knows all that.
Sure.
And is always saying to me, "You remember so and so? You remember so and so?" And I said, "No, I don't remember so and so. I do remember other things, but
yeah,
some people are better at recalling things." And so for me, it was a little bit of effort.
Sure.
But I think it was valuable.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was fun because I think in a lot of cases, you know, the things that came out in the book were, big highlights of things that had happened to you in your life and things that you had experienced and learned. I feel like, maybe somebody that remembers their high school days to that extent we might have had to have sifted through the stuff that maybe wasn't really that valuable. Like, we didn't really care who you dated in high school. We wanted to know kind of the lessons learned from making the Blackpool final. That was pretty cool, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we appreciate that. But it was fun listening to the story and hearing how you got to where you're at today, and the ups and the downs. And what a cool book. I mean, I think it turned out really great. If I do say so myself, I'm maybe a little biased, but I think our team at Dance Majic did a really great job of putting that together. And it's fun to be able to see that come to life. I have hopes of maybe doing that with more of the industry's professionals, because there's not enough information about our industry, and even when we search out history on what's going on, it's very hard to find. It's very hard to get a hold of what really actually transpired as to lead us to this point. So it was really fun to be able to get to know you in that respect and hear your stories. And for those of you out there that haven't picked up a copy of the book, you should. You can go to ronmontez.com and grab your copy right away and be able to learn some more about Ron and learn from his teaching and his experience through the years. One of the things that, speaking of teaching, we oftentimes bring Ron into Dance Majic to do our teacher certifications because we feel that those certifications are quite important. I think not only just for us here in our venue, but also I think it's important that the teachers out there in the dance world are getting certified. There's a certain element of respect and quality that I think needs to be earned back in the dance world. It seems to me that years ago, and I'm not sure how many years back it was, but the powers that be decided that there was no longer a regulation needed for who taught. You could have amateurs teaching now, and there was no sort of price of entry or cost of entry to being a dance teacher or dance professional. And it seemed like before that there was, if you were a professional, you could teach. And if you were an amateur, you couldn't compete as an amateur and teach. And that, I think they took that a little bit from the Olympics. The Olympics kind of said, okay, if you're an athlete and you're an amateur, you can't compete against other amateurs that aren't making this their career and their life. And so we had that approach for a long time in our dance industry of amateurs couldn't teach, professionals could teach, and if you were going to be a professional, you had to dance against the other professionals. It was sort of this, this level that you had to commit to in order to do it. But ever since they deregulated that, so to speak, they kind of opened up the marketplace to a lot of amateurs and a lot of young teachers teaching, and there's a lot to be said for what that did to the industry. So I'm just curious if you have recognized that, and if you've noticed any impact on the industry because of that move, and how that's changed in the last few years, and maybe what your opinions are about what's happened there.
Yes, there is a crossover and an overlap that's happened recently, recent years, that was not there previously. But and it's had some positive effects, but has had some negative effects as well. Speaking of the negative, young amateur couples who may be quite skilled, quite talented, put in a teaching position, don't have the experience that a more seasoned teacher would.
Sure.
And so their judgment sometimes and their limited experience goes from what they've experienced themselves, which is less, let's say. Now, when you're training other people, the more experience you have, I think the better it is.
Right.
Especially when we're training children.
Right.
I'm not talking about young adults or necessarily or grown-ups, but children. Because if we teach children in the way that we teach a more mature person who's experienced life, and we convey movements to them that are overly sensual, that are suggestive in certain ways, in dress, in manner, it's not good for our industry at all.
Sure.
And the kids, they don't know anything. They're just going to do what their teacher tells them. So we have to be very careful how we teach kids.
Sure.
How we teach children, and use wisdom. And you can see the kids out there who are winking or blowing kisses or wiggling their bodies in ways that they shouldn't be moving their bodies at such a young age. This is not healthy for us at all.
Right.
On the other hand, we see kids out there who've been trained, who stand up, they work on their posture, they work on connection with their partners, and they interpret the music as good as a child can.
Sure.
This is great.
Sure.
This is our job, is to teach them how to dance and have fun at the same time, to interact, because it's a great way of interacting. Kids have.
Right.
They learn to, how to treat another person of the opposite sex.
Right.
The guy learns to escort her,
Sure.
To look after her. They learn to cooperate. They learn to work together. These are great qualities that young people can learn by studying ballroom dancing. But we have to be careful in how and what we present to them. And I think sometimes it hasn't been good stuff.
What do you think the value of learning the theory? Like you've done a bunch of tests in the last few days for a lot of the teachers, and what do you think that the impact of these teachers learning the theory and learning the technique in that manner does for them as teachers, as opposed to the people that aren't doing that and aren't getting trained to learn that?
Yeah, very important. If you don't have that foundation, you need a foundation in every, let's say, skill.
Sure.
You need, in golf, you need how to swing properly, how to stand properly.
Right.
In tennis, you need to know how to hold the racket. et cetera, et cetera. There's all these foundational type skills that you need to develop to build off of,
Right.
and to become better. And in ballroom dancing, we need to know where to place the feet, how much to turn, the accepted versus the edgy or the variations.
Sure.
We need to know the difference between a foundational step and a variation
Right.
of that. In fact, most of our variations come from the foundational patterns. So that trunk of the tree, so to speak, or the roots, have to be there in order to get a clear understanding of what the dance means.
Right.
And taking exams or taking tests strengthen that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few people who have avoided that,
Right.
and have just gone straight to the performance aspect,
Right.
and they've been decent performers, but they don't really know what they're doing and why and
Right.
where it came from.
Right.
So, that's not as good.
I think it's like you were saying earlier, there's sort of a balance between the technical side and the performance side, and maybe the sweet spot is somewhere right in that middle ground where those two elements cross over. And I think that's where we see some of the best of our dancers and the best of our champions have found a place in that middle ground where they understand it, but they also can perform. And I mean, you've worked with some of the greatest technicians out there in the world. I mean, some of the names that maybe only people have kind of heard of, but maybe who would you say were some of the best technicians that you ever got to work with in the past?
That's an interesting story because the English style of Latin American dance was the first competitive form.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like Latin dancing. So things have evolved and changed
Right.
for the better, of course. For instance, when I first went to England to train in the cha-cha, a bounce was an essential part of that dance.
Right. Right.
You had this bounce that you had to do to make it technically correct
Right.
at that time. But the bounce is silly, and it looks silly. So the cha-cha-cha should be flat and level and grounded and earthy.
Right.
So that has changed and improved
Yeah.
greatly. I don't know if I've answered your question. Maybe you can repeat part of it again so I can latch on to what you were
Just
intending.
who were some of the best technicians that
Oh,
you
yes,
had the opportunity
that's right.
to work with?
Exactly, that's what you said. When I first went to, well, let's put it this way. I came from an American social dance background.
Sure.
That was my basis. We had good dancers. We had good teachers. Okay. Then I went to England. Okay. And there were highly respected teachers and dancers there too.
Right.
Some of them I thought were excellent, but a lot of them were very skilled at conveying their story or their agenda.
Sure.
But they didn't know anything about Latin dance.
Right.
There were more skilled ballroom teachers in England
Right.
than Latin.
Interesting.
And so taking a ballroom lesson in England was very beneficial.
Sure.
From many different coaches.
Yeah.
As I did. But the Latin training to me was like some people would be raving about a particular teacher, and I would take a lesson from that teacher, and I felt totally empty
Right.
because I had come from a background of Latin American dance.
Right,
So
exactly.
It was, I had some information in my brain already about lead and follow, the man's role, the woman's role,
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. Now, as far as individuals, I think I trained from a famous coach, Nina Hunt,
Sure.
and she was good at preparing you for competition.
Sure.
Your dress, your manner,
Right.
your interaction on and off the floor, that type of thing.
I see.
I worked with others who were who gave good information as far as any particular dance. Like Michael Stilianos was a very good paso doble guy.
Right.
He really understood the dance, and he could give you a whole bunch of related movements that were really cool.
Right.
Sometimes they were not very clear at the moment, but you had information to take home and work on.
Right.
I think all the English teachers understood jive because that's their form of swing.
Sure.
So that was fine.
Sure.
Some of the other coaches, let's say in the U.S., were Vernon Brock, who was my coach.
Right.
Vernon Brock was a great showman. He was good at high impact things.
Right.
How to sell things.
Right.
One of my first teachers was Nancy Elliott. She taught me what dancing was all about from the basic perspectives.
Right.
I think one of the most valuable people and the most I learned the most from was Donnie Burns because we traded information.
Right.
And we toured with one another in our double show
Sure.
called License to Thrill. And we had a lot of downtime and a lot of rehearsal time. So we shared information back and forth, where I came from, where he came from, where I came from, where he came from, what was valuable, what wasn't valuable, et cetera, et cetera. And he had an open mind. He was like
Right.
I said, he was more of a pioneer.
Right. So it was a bit of a mastermind, that you put together, and some of my listeners know about Think and Grow Rich, the book by Napoleon Hill, and he talks a lot about creating a mastermind. And this was, information from Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford, and this is how some of these successful people really made it to the top, was through masterminds. And so it sounds a lot like that was probably a super valuable element or asset to your education, is being able to kind of collaborate with somebody else that you
Exactly.
both respected each other, you both had something to offer, and together you were able to come up with maybe a higher state of learning
Yes.
because of it.
Very true. Another person that deserves credit is Peter Maxwell.
Sure.
Now, Peter Maxwell had a way of conveying information that was unique.
Yeah.
He did not want you to copy him. He wanted you to think about what you were doing and come up with your own way of doing it, which was
Interesting.
which was very good. Once I watched him in competition with his partner do back rocks in samba.
Uh-huh.
And I saw this expansion, contraction, and this rhythmic action, and this really good working. I said, would you mind dancing the rocks with my partner, Liz? He said, no. He says, I'm not going to do that. We'll talk about it, and you'll come up with your own way of doing it.
Nice.
I don't want you to copy me.
Right.
So he made you think,
Yeah.
and he did very little active physical activity in the lesson.
Yeah.
He was just conveying information to your mind and stimulating you the way you thought about your dancing. So Peter Maxwell was really good in that respect.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple other questions just to kind of close up. One of the things that is super important to me, and I think my listeners, you heard me at the beginning of the show call them lifers. It's sort of just a tag, a calling label for us that we're lifers. We want to be able to improve our life, whatever it is that we're doing. We're working on our dancing, or we're working on our schoolwork. All of us are in different places. Sometimes it's business, and we want to be able to put focus into that next level of living, and not just making it through, not just going through a day and not actually remembering the day, or not actually making something good of that day. And so we kind of labeled that as being a lifer, when you're curious and you're going after that next level. And one of the ways that we feel like describes that is this idea of every second, every minute. Every minute we want to make important. Every minute we want to be in the moment and live in that space. And when we were doing your interviews for your book and getting that together, one of the things we really felt like you brought across and conveyed in your message was just living in the moment and enjoying what it was that you do. And you said something that kind of shocked, I think, a lot of our competitors. And you were like, yeah, we didn't really have like crazy goals. We just wanted to dance. We wanted to be in the moment, and we wanted to enjoy what we did, and we ended up winning, and it was great. And so I'd like to hear more about your perspective on living every minute and being in the moment and that idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very much of an incrementalist. I believe in slowly, step by step, the pursuing of a goal. If if you're constantly focused on becoming some far away thing,
Sure.
it's a little bit frustrating. I feel if you're enjoying the process, you will get there anyway.
Right.
So if every day is important to you, if you love practice, if you don't like practice, you shouldn't be in this profession anyway.
Right.
If you're a a dancer, you should love practicing. You should love music.
Right.
And then when you every day, that's something that you look forward to doing.
Sure.
So in a way, we're fulfilling ourselves
Right.
on a daily basis, and it leads to great things because we improve. I've run against people who look at the long range,
Sure.
and I think that really does work for some people because what they imagine, they will become,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
But I didn't do it that way. My way was just a little different. I did it from day by day, practice, enjoy, progress.
Right. It's huge. Every minute living in the moment and experiencing the journey. I have been privileged enough to train a number of people, number of couples that have become champions. And one of the overwhelming comments that I get from all of them is that it goes by so fast. That moment when you win, that moment when you hoist up the trophy and you get to experience it, it literally goes by so fast. And the things that they end up remembering from that was the time spent, the journey, the ups and the downs, the things that held them back or that they had to overcome in terms of the hurdles, the special moments of getting little pieces of it along the way to get to that point. But with so many of the people that I've helped get to their championships, they always tell me afterwards, yeah, you're right. That moment when we won, it seemed like it was there and gone and done within, such a short period of time that really the part that was so much more worth it was what they did to get there, not necessarily that one moment. Mm-hmm. And, that leads back to this idea that every minute counts, every minute, and being in those moments makes such an impact.
There's a saying in the book, now that you reminded me of it, that the body may perish, it's in the Bible somewhere, but the mind is renewed each day. So basically, you're starting each day with a clean slate in your mind, and you can,
Sure.
and you can aspire to things, you can learn things, you can change your opinion on things. I think what happens when we do something a long time, like I have, you easily can rest on your laurels and become cynical.
Sure.
The way we did it was so much better. Today is a bunch of crap. It's so easy to do that because it's like, it's blunt and it's there and it's like a block of concrete.
Sure.
You're not covering new ground. You're not open to new ideas, and you're not willing to change your opinion.
Right.
And this is what is a danger with longtime professionals.
Yeah.
And I run against them all the time.
Yeah.
They don't want to grow. They just want to hang on to what they did.
Right.
And what they did was fine, but it's history too.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you're as a teacher, you're only as good as your last lesson.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yeah.
And each lesson is a challenge, starting over from scratch. That person doesn't care that 30 years ago you won a Peabody contest.
Right. Exactly.
They don't care about that. They may be polite and say, "Oh, I've heard you won the Peabody contest in 1982," but they really want to know what you're going to do for them.
Right.
And in order to be good for them as a teacher, your mind has to be flexible and learn from them as well. Because a lot of times couples will teach you things.
Sure.
You'll ask them to do something, and they'll do something different. And you'll say, "You know what? That's better. Let's pursue it from that direction."
Right.
So
right.
it's a constant learning things. Even teaching. Teaching is not just throwing knowledge out. It's a two-way street.
Sure.
So it's great in that respect because working with couples can teach you a lot.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of close up and finish for this interview, what do you think the next evolution of our ballroom competition world is, as far as maybe judging or dancing, the format that we operate in. What do you think is going to be the next evolution of where we're headed? I think, like we were talking about earlier, YouTube changed a lot in being able to have such quick access to what's current. Blackpool will be streamed live on the internet. Everybody will be able to see it instantly. In years past, we had to wait months and months and months to maybe get a video on VHS that we could watch 50,000 times. But now you get it live. So what do you think is the next evolution? Where are we headed next? What's going to be the next cool thing in the ballroom world?
I can't tell the future, but I can say that our dancers are so good nowadays. They're respected throughout the entertainment industry.
Sure.
You put a good couple from our ballroom dance world on television, and people admire them.
Sure.
This was not true before.
Right.
It was a secret. Ballroom dancing was a secret, and it was staid, and it was old-fashioned.
Right.
It's not that way now.
Sure.
So it's contemporary. It's very has high entertainment value, and so we're lucky in that respect, because you can say you're a dancer now in the ballroom dance world. People go, "Wow, that's cool."
Yeah.
I saw Dancing with the Stars, or I saw the PBS show, or I saw whatever.
Yeah.
There's even been ballroom dancing represented in some of those other shows too.
Sure.
So, we're lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
The general public is more aware and more appreciative. So I think that's great. Now, as far as the competitive arena and all that stuff, I think the model that we're using is pretty successful.
Right.
We have a strong pro-am division that supports the whole industry.
Sure.
Which we have dance studios who feed into the competitive world. The dance studio basically is the foundational building block of our whole industry. So the dance studio owner, the dance studio business person, the dance studio entrepreneur, or the teacher is where it all comes from.
Right.
So we have to appreciate that. Sometimes dancers forget that, and
Sure.
they have to know that to contribute to their home base environment studio is a valuable thing to do.
Right.
Just thinking of yourself is not the best way for the industry to grow.
Sure. Well, it seems like that's not just in our dance world, but maybe just in general as well. I think a lot of people get so stuck on making it day to day and just living their life to get through the day that it's easy to forget that there are other people in the world. And like I said, we call those people lifers. They start to recognize that they're not the only one that exists, and that we're trying to make this place a better place by improving the people around us as well. Well, we sure appreciate you joining us today for the interview, and we want to encourage everybody out there to go take a look at getting Ron's book. Again, you can get it at ronmontez.com, so it's really easy to find. And you should pick up his biography and read about Ron and all of his experiences. There's a lot to learn, and I know I learned a lot today from this interview, and there's just so much more in the book, so you guys should check out that and pick up the book. Ron has a number of comps. What are the competitions that you own?
Well, I'm involved in a new event called the Las Vegas Lights. It's in
Okay.
May in Las Vegas.
Awesome.
It's a one-day event. I have partners for that.
Cool.
And I'm involved in a competition in Hawaii called Aloha Ball.
Yeah, if you're
And,
interested in
that's-
going to
that's
these,
that's a fun place to go, of course. And,
you can just Google them and they'll come up. So
yeah, Aloha Ball
yeah.
and Las Vegas Lights. Those are the two I'm involved with at the
Sure.
moment.
And for those of you that aren't ballroom dancers, you don't have to be. You can go and treat it as a vacation and go check out the competition. They're just so fun to watch. I always tease and say ballroom comps are like fancy track meets. Everybody dresses up, and yet there's a lot of cheering and screaming and yelling and voting for your couples in terms of your voice. And they're a lot of fun. There's shows at the ballroom comp. So if you're not a ballroom person, it's okay. You know, we appreciate you listening to the show today. I know it was heavily based on us ballroom dancers, but there's a lot here for you guys. And any other comps, or just those two right now?
Just those two. Yes.
Just those two, yeah. So, so check out those comps if you're going to those areas and at those time of the year, and pick up his book. As a side note, thanks for listening. We appreciate all of you out there that have continued to tune in to our podcast and check us out on a regular basis. We're so thankful for your time and energy coming to listen to this. And as usual, if you feel like this podcast would affect somebody in a positive way, maybe change their life, we'd sure appreciate you sharing it with them and getting them on board to listen, so you can help change somebody else's life for the better. Keep an eye out. My new book is coming out soon. We're hoping in the next few months, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be promoting that coming out soon. So make sure you like and share the podcast. Want more magic for life? If so, then reserve your copy of my new book. Get your copy at everyminutebook.com. Inside this book, you'll find the secrets to attaining the next level of performance in anything you do. Learn the secrets behind emotional mastery that'll start you on your new journey of being a lifer. Whether you're an athlete, a business professional, or an artist, this book will change your life forever. Get your copy reserved today.